The Mediterranean sun beat down on my skin as I adjusted the strings of my white bikini for what felt like the 100th time. I could feel the heat radiating off the teak deck beneath my bare feet, each plank polished to a mirror shine that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. The yacht rocked gently beneath me, a subtle reminder that I was floating somewhere off the coast of Capri, on what I'd been told was Dante's new acquisition. My ex-boyfriend's yacht. The thought still felt surreal. I spread my towel across one of the pristine loungers, the fabric crisp and monogrammed with letters I didn't recognize. Not a D for Dante. Strange. But then again, Dante had always been full of surprises, most of them unpleasant ones I'd discovered too late. The breakup had been 3 months ago, swift and brutal. He'd simply announced over dinner at our favorite trattoria that he'd outgrown what we had, that his new business ventures required a different kind of partner. Someone more sophisticated, he'd said. Someone who understood his world. I'd spent those 3 months trying to prove I could be that someone. When Dante's assistant Marco had texted yesterday saying Dante would be spending the weekend on his new yacht and suggested I might want to stop by to talk, I'd seen it as a sign. A chance to show him I could fit into his increasingly glamorous life. Hence the new bikini, the carefully applied waterproof makeup, the practiced casual pose I'd been rehearsing. I settled onto the lounger, tilting my face toward the sun. The warmth felt good against my skin, though anxiety churned in my stomach. What if this was a mistake? What if Dante laughed at my transparent attempt to win him back? Through my closed eyelids, I sensed a shadow fall across me. My heart leaped. He was here. I opened my eyes slowly, arranging my features into what I hoped was an effortlessly beautiful expression, the kind of look I'd seen in Italian Vogue spreads. But the man standing over me wasn't Dante. He was taller, broader through the shoulders, with dark hair that fell carelessly across his forehead despite obvious expensive styling. His white linen shirt was unbuttoned halfway down his chest, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin and the edge of what looked like a tattoo. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath, steel gray and sharp as surgical instruments, studying me with an expression somewhere between amusement and irritation. Behind him stood 2 other men, both wearing dark suits despite the heat. Their presence radiated a kind of alert stillness that made my skin prickle with unease. I sat up quickly, suddenly very aware of how little my bikini covered. I'm sorry. I thought this was Dante's yacht. The corner of the stranger's mouth lifted in what couldn't quite be called a smile. Did you? His accent was Italian, but refined, the kind that spoke of international schools and multiple languages. And who, exactly, is Dante? My cheeks burned. Dante Moretti. He told me he'd be here this weekend. The man exchanged a glance with one of his companions, who murmured something in rapid Italian I couldn't quite catch. Then he looked back at me, and this time there was definite amusement in his expression. I'm afraid Signor Moretti no longer has access to this vessel, he said, each word precise and measured. It was reclaimed approximately 1 hour ago due to certain financial irregularities. The deck seemed to tilt more sharply beneath me, though the sea remained calm. Reclaimed? Confiscated, if you prefer the more direct term. He moved closer, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with sea air. Which means, bella ragazza, that you are currently trespassing on my property. My throat went dry. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing my towel and clutching it against my chest like inadequate armor. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I'll leave right away. Will you? He tilted his head slightly, studying me the way someone might examine an unexpected piece of art. And how, exactly, do you plan to do that? We're anchored 2 miles offshore. I looked around wildly, realizing for the first time that I couldn't see any other boats nearby. The coastline was a distant smudge on the horizon. When I'd arrived via the yacht's tender this morning, I'd been too focused on my mission to notice how isolated we were. I have a phone, I said. though my voice wavered. I can call someone. Your phone is in your bag below deck, one of the suited men said, his English heavily accented, along with your wallet and identification. How did they know that? Had they already searched the cabin where I'd changed? The man in the linen shirt held up a hand, silencing his companion. Forgive my associate's directness. I am Nico Salvatore. He extended his hand toward me, the gesture somehow both courteous and commanding. I stared at his hand for a moment before my manners overtook my confusion. Luna Costa. His grip was firm, warm, and he held my hand a fraction longer than necessary. Well, Luna Costa, it seems we have a situation. Nico released my hand and gestured toward the deck chairs. Please sit. There's no need to stand there looking like a frightened rabbit. I hesitated, then slowly lowered myself back onto the lounger, keeping my towel wrapped tightly around me. Nico settled into the chair across from me, with the easy confidence of someone completely at home in his body and his surroundings. This Dante, he said, crossing one ankle over the opposite knee. He is your boyfriend? Ex-boyfriend, I corrected, then immediately wondered why I felt the need to clarify. Ah, and you came here today to what? Win him back with your charming display? His tone was light, but I caught the edge of mockery underneath. My face flamed hotter than the sun could account for. That's none of your business. Perhaps not, but I'm curious about the kind of man who would abandon a yacht containing such an appealing visitor. His gaze traveled over me in a way that made me very conscious of the thin towel between us. He must be either very foolish or very desperate. He didn't abandon it, I said, defensive despite myself. You said it was confiscated. Due to his failure to pay for it, Nico clarified. Signor Moretti, it seems, has been living considerably beyond his means. This yacht was purchased on credit he cannot cover. The sports cars, the apartment in Milano, the expensive dinners at Nobu, all borrowed money he has no hope of repaying. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. The life Dante had presented to me, the success I'd believed in, had been nothing but an elaborate fiction. I didn't know, I whispered. Of course you didn't. Nico's voice softened slightly. Men like Dante Moretti are very skilled at creating illusions. It's how they operate until reality catches up with them. One of the suited men approached and murmured something in Nico's ear. He nodded, his expression shifting to something more serious, more calculating. When he looked back at me, I felt like I was being reassessed, measured for some purpose I couldn't fathom. Luna, he said, and the use of my first name sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. I have a proposition for you. I pulled the towel tighter. What kind of proposition? The kind that could benefit us both. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, giving me his complete attention in a way that felt both flattering and dangerous. You want revenge on Dante Moretti for wasting your time and making a fool of you. I want to solve a rather delicate problem of my own. Perhaps we can help each other. I don't understand. Nico glanced at his companions, then back at me. What I'm about to tell you requires a certain level of discretion. Can you offer that? I should have said no. Should have insisted on leaving immediately. But curiosity warred with caution, and won. Yes. I operate in a specialized market, he began, choosing his words carefully. I acquire and sell certain valuable items to private collectors, items that sometimes exist in a gray area of legality. My eyes widened. You're a criminal? His mouth quirked. I prefer entrepreneur with flexible ethics, but essentially, yes, though I assure you I operate within my own code of honor. I started to stand. I should go. Please. He held up a hand. Hear me out before you flee in moral outrage. This concerns you directly. Against my better judgment, I stayed seated. I have a business rival, Nico continued. A woman named Valentina Rossi, who has become increasingly aggressive in her attempts to either partner with me or destroy me. She's dangerous, well-connected, and doesn't take no for an answer. Recently, she's made it clear that she views my unmarried status as an opportunity. She believes that by positioning herself as my romantic interest, she can gain access to my network and resources. And you're telling me this why? Because I need her to believe I'm unavailable. Specifically, I need her to see that I'm already in a committed relationship with someone she wouldn't dare challenge. Understanding began to dawn. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Fiancé, he corrected, for the summer season. 3 months of appearances at certain events, photographs for social media, public displays of affection when necessary. In exchange, I will ensure that Dante Moretti's financial situation becomes significantly worse than it already is. I will make certain he understands exactly what he lost when he discarded you. The offer hung between us, tempting and terrible in equal measure. I looked at Nico Salvatore, this stranger who claimed to operate outside the law, who wanted to use me as a shield against a dangerous woman, who promised revenge I hadn't even known I wanted. You're insane, I said finally. Perhaps. His smile was sharp, predatory. But I'm also serious, and wealthy enough to make it worth your while. You'll have access to everything you need to play the role convincingly. Wardrobe, jewelry, accommodations. You'll travel with me to Portofino, Monaco, Saint-Tropez. You'll attend parties that Dante could only dream of crashing, and when our arrangement ends, you'll walk away with enough money to start whatever life you choose, while Dante watches his paper empire crumble completely. It was madness. Complete insanity. I need to think about it, I heard myself say. Nico stood in one fluid motion. Of course. While you think, why don't you join me for lunch? My chef has prepared something special, and it would be a shame for you to make a decision on an empty stomach. He extended his hand again, and this time when I took it, he helped me to my feet with effortless strength. His fingers were warm against mine, and I noticed the calluses on his palm. Not the soft hands of someone who only signed checks. Come, he said, still holding my hand. The main cabin has a private area where you can change into something more comfortable, unless you prefer to dine in your bikini, which I certainly wouldn't object to, but might prove awkward for my crew. Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch toward a smile. Clothes would be good. He led me across the deck toward the yacht's interior, his hand at the small of my back, in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. The suited men remained at a discreet distance, but clearly within earshot. The main cabin took my breath away. Where I'd expected ostentatious luxury, I found understated elegance. Cream leather seating, dark wood paneling, and carefully positioned spotlights that illuminated what appeared to be genuine artwork on the walls. A Modigliani, unless I was very mistaken. But it couldn't be real. Nico noticed my stare. You know art? I studied art history in university, I admitted. Before I had to drop out to work full-time. Interesting. He guided me toward a corridor lined with more artwork. What made you leave? Money, or the lack of it. I ran my fingers along the polished wood railing. My parents passed away when I was 20. There wasn't much left after the debts were paid. I'm sorry. And he sounded like he meant it. Losing family is never easy. We reached a door, which he opened to reveal a spacious cabin dominated by a king-sized bed with crisp white linens. My bag sat on a chair near the porthole, exactly where I'd left it. Take your time, Nico said. When you're ready, follow the corridor back to the main cabin. We'll have lunch on the forward deck. He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. Luna, whatever you decide about my proposal, you should know that Dante Moretti never deserved you. Any man who can't see what he had is a fool. Before I could respond, he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind spinning. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to ordinary girls from Naples who worked double shifts at tourist cafes. But the luxury surrounding me was very real. The weight of Nico's offer was very real. And the possibility of making Dante regret his dismissal of me was extremely, dangerously appealing. I stood and moved to my bag, pulling out the sundress I'd brought. As I changed, catching glimpses of myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back. When had I become someone who would consider a criminal's proposal? When had revenge started to sound more attractive than dignity? But even as I questioned myself, I knew I was going to accept. Not for the money. Not even primarily for the revenge. Though both appealed. There was something about Nico Salvatore that sparked a curiosity in me I hadn't felt in years. Something dangerous and alive that made me want to know what would happen if I said yes. I finished dressing, ran my fingers through my salt-tangled hair, and took a deep breath. Then I followed the corridor back to the main cabin, ready to make a deal with a beautiful devil and see where it led. The forward deck had been transformed into an intimate dining space while I'd been changing. A table draped in white linen stood beneath a canvas awning, set with crystal glasses and silver that caught the afternoon light. Nico stood near the railing, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian with an edge to his voice that suggested the conversation wasn't entirely pleasant. He ended the call when he saw me, slipping the phone into his pocket. His eyes traveled over my simple yellow sundress, and something in his expression shifted. "Much better," he said, though the bikini had its merits. I felt heat rise to my cheeks but refused to look away. "Is the offer still on the table?" "Direct. I like that." He pulled out a chair for me. "Yes, the offer stands. But before you give me your answer, you should understand exactly what you'd be agreeing to." I sat, and he took the seat across from me. One of the suited men appeared with a bottle of wine, pouring for both of us before disappearing as silently as he'd arrived. "The arrangement would begin immediately," Nico began. "Today, Valentina is hosting a gallery opening in Portofino tomorrow evening, and she's expecting me to attend alone. Instead, I'll arrive with you on my arm, wearing a ring that makes our engagement unmistakable." That's fast. Valentina doesn't give me the luxury of time. She's accelerating her moves, becoming more aggressive. Last week, she had her people follow mine. The week before, she made it clear that she views any woman in my vicinity as competition to be eliminated. His jaw tightened. I don't use that word lightly. Eliminated. A chill ran through me despite the warm sun. "You mean she'd hurt someone?" Valentina Rossi doesn't get her hands dirty directly. But yes, she has resources and connections that make her dangerous, which is why you'll have protection at all times. Marco and Luca, he gestured to the two men who'd repositioned themselves at discrete points around the deck, will ensure your safety. I took a sip of wine, buying myself time to process. And what exactly would I have to do, besides wear a ring and attend events? Be convincing as my fiancé. That means appearing comfortable in my presence, comfortable with my touch. We'll need to sell the romance. His eyes held mine. Can you do that, Luna? Can you let a man you just met put his arm around you, hold your hand, kiss you when necessary? My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm not sleeping with you. I'm not asking you to. His voice was firm. This is strictly professional despite appearances. Your virtue, such as it is, remains intact. Such as it is? I bristled. He smiled. A figure of speech. I make no assumptions about your personal choices. The suited man returned with plates of food, gorgeous arrangements of grilled fish, roasted vegetables, and what looked like handmade pasta. My stomach growled, reminding me I'd been too nervous to eat breakfast. "Eat," Nico commanded gently. We can continue talking while you restore your strength." I picked up my fork, and the first bite of fish melted on my tongue. Whatever else could be said about Nico Salvatore, he employed an exceptional chef. "Why me?" I asked between bites. "You could hire an actress, someone experienced at pretending." I considered it, but actresses talk, and discretion is essential in my line of work. You, on the other hand, have stumbled into this situation by accident. You have no connections to my world, which makes you perfect. Plus, he paused, there's something authentic about you that I find appealing. Valentina will sense that authenticity. It will make our relationship more believable. Tell me about her, Valentina. Nico set down his wine glass, his expression growing cold. Valentina Rossi inherited her family's business 5 years ago when her father died under mysterious circumstances. Some say she poisoned him, though nothing was ever proven. She's expanded their operations aggressively, moving into territories that were previously stable. She has the face of a model and the instincts of a viper. And she wants you because I control access to certain markets she desires, art collectors specifically. Very wealthy, very discreet collectors who trust me to acquire items they can't obtain through legitimate channels. He met my eyes. I told you I operate in gray areas. My clients want pieces that museums would never sell, that governments have claimed, that exist only in private vaults. I find these pieces and facilitate their transfer. It's extremely lucrative. It's theft. Sometimes it's recovery of items that were stolen generations ago. Sometimes it's simply circumventing bureaucratic red tape that prevents rightful owners from accessing their own property. The morality is complicated. I shouldn't have been listening, shouldn't have been sitting here calmly eating lunch with a man who admitted to criminal activities. But his honesty was strangely compelling. "What happens to Dante?" I asked. Specifically, Nico's smile returned, sharp and satisfied. "I've already made some calls. By tomorrow morning, every line of credit he's been operating on will be called in. His creditors will demand immediate payment. The cars will be repossessed, the apartment lease terminated. His business partners will discover certain financial irregularities that will lead them to distance themselves rapidly." That seems excessive for someone you've never met. He wasted your time and made you feel inadequate. That alone warrants correction. Nico leaned back in his chair. But more importantly, I despise men who live on borrowed dreams while hurting those around them. Dante Moretti is a parasite. I'm simply removing him from the ecosystem. "And you're what? A noble predator?" He laughed, genuine amusement lighting his features. "I've never claimed nobility, but I have standards. I don't hurt innocents. I don't betray my word, and I pay my debts, both financial and personal." We ate in silence for a few moments, and I found myself studying him. The way sunlight caught in his dark hair, the strong line of his jaw, the casual elegance with which he moved. There was something magnetic about him, a pull I couldn't quite explain. "If I agree," I said slowly, "I have conditions. Name them. First, no one gets hurt because of me. If Valentina comes after me, you protect me, but you don't retaliate in ways that put innocent people at risk." "Agreed. Next?" "Second, at the end of 3 months, this ends cleanly. No strings, no expectations, no complications." "Of course. Next?" "Third, I want to know what I'm walking into before each event. No surprises, no throwing me into situations I'm not prepared for." Nico nodded thoughtfully. "Reasonable. I accept your conditions. Do you accept my offer?" I took a deep breath, feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. "Yes, I accept." His smile was triumphant. He stood and moved to my side of the table, extending his hand again. "Then welcome to my world, Luna Costa. I promise it will be interesting." I placed my hand in his and let him pull me to my feet. We stood close, his height forcing me to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "We should practice," he said softly. "Practice what?" "This." He raised his hand to cup my cheek, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "Being comfortable with my touch. Valentina will be watching for any sign that our relationship is false." My breath caught as his other hand settled at my waist, warm through the thin fabric of my dress. "Nico, just trust me." He drew me closer until I could feel the heat of his body, smell the sea salt and cologne that seemed to be his natural scent. "Put your hands on my shoulders." I did, feeling the solid muscle beneath the linen shirt. My pulse raced, but not entirely from fear. "When we're in public," he murmured, "I'll touch you like this, possessively, like you belong to me and everyone should know it. Can you handle that?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good girl." His hand slid from my waist to the small of my back. "And occasionally, like now, I'll need to kiss you. Nothing inappropriate, but convincing enough that no one doubts we're lovers." "We're not lovers," I managed to whisper. "No, but we need everyone to believe we are." "May I?" I should have said no, should have pulled away. Instead, I found myself nodding again, my heart hammering so hard I was certain he could feel it. Nico lowered his head slowly, giving me every opportunity to stop him. His lips brushed mine, soft at first, testing, then firmer, his hand tightening at my back as he deepened the kiss just enough to make it real. When he pulled away, I was breathless, disoriented. "There," he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. That wasn't so difficult, was it? I couldn't form words, could only stare at him while my mind tried to catch up with what had just happened. "Luca," Nico called without taking his eyes from mine. "Bring the case from my cabin." One of the suited men disappeared below deck. Nico guided me back to my chair, his hand lingering at my back. "You'll need proper jewelry for tomorrow," he said, starting with an engagement ring that makes a statement. Luca returned, carrying a small leather case, which he set on the table before retreating. Nico opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, the center stone easily 3 carats, surrounded by smaller diamonds in an intricate setting that looked both vintage and timeless. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said, lifting the ring from its velvet bed. "She would have liked you, I think. She appreciated directness." He took my left hand, and I watched in a daze as he slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, the diamonds catching the light and throwing rainbow sparks. "How did you know my size?" "I'm good at estimating measurements." His smile suggested he was good at many things. "Do you like it?" "It's beautiful." I couldn't stop staring at my hand, at the ring that transformed it into something foreign. "Then it's yours for the duration of our arrangement. Wear it always. Valentina has people everywhere, and they'll be watching." The reality of what I'd agreed to began to sink in. This wasn't a game. This was real danger, real deception, real consequences. "I should warn you," Nico said, as if reading my thoughts, "that once we begin, there's no backing out without serious complications. Valentina doesn't forgive, and she doesn't forget. If she discovers this is a ruse, she'll view it as a personal insult, which means I'm committed. Yes." He studied my face. "Having second thoughts?" I looked at the ring, then at him, then out at the endless blue Mediterranean stretching around us. Somewhere on that distant shore, Dante was probably just discovering that his credit cards had been declined, that his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. "No," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "No second thoughts." Nico's expression softened into something that might have been approval. "Excellent. Then let's discuss tomorrow. We'll dock in Portofino by evening." I have a villa there where you'll stay. My housekeeper, Signora Bellini, will help you prepare. I've already arranged for a stylist to bring appropriate clothing for the gallery opening. You were very confident I'd say yes. I was hopeful. There's a difference. He refilled our wine glasses. The opening begins at 8. We'll arrive fashionably late, around 9. You'll wear the ring, of course, and I'll introduce you as my fiancé to select guests. Valentina will be watching our every move. What should I say if people ask about us, about how we met? The truth, slightly modified. We met when you came aboard my yacht by mistake. I was charmed by your boldness. It was love at first sight. His tone made it clear he was amused by the irony. Love at first sight, I repeated. No one will believe that. You'd be surprised what people believe when they want to. Besides, he leaned closer. We're both good actors when necessary. You convinced yourself you could win back a man who was never worthy of you. I've convinced art collectors to pay millions for pieces of questionable provenance. Playing lovers should be simple by comparison. The sun had begun its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Nico stood and offered his hand once more. Come, I'll show you the rest of the yacht, your temporary domain. I let him lead me through the various decks, each more luxurious than the last. A master suite with a bathroom larger than my entire apartment. A media room with leather recliners. A wine cellar that looked like it belonged in a mansion. A gym that overlooked the water. This will be your cabin, he said, opening a door to reveal a beautifully appointed stateroom. My bag had already been moved there. My quarters are on the deck above if you need anything. Marco and Luca have cabins nearby. Where do I sleep tonight? Here. We'll remain anchored off Capri until morning, then make our way to Portofino. I suggest you rest. Tomorrow will be demanding. He moved to leave, then paused. Luna? Thank you for taking this risk. I won't let anything happen to you. After he'd gone, I sank onto the bed and stared at the ring on my finger. 24 hours ago, I'd been a girl with a broken heart and few prospects. Now I was the fake fiancé of a criminal who dealt in stolen art, about to walk into a world I didn't understand. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in months. The villa in Portofino exceeded every expectation I might have formed. We'd arrived at mid-afternoon, the yacht gliding into a private dock where a sleek black car waited. Nico had been making phone calls throughout most of the journey, his expression growing progressively darker with each conversation. I'd learned not to interrupt, simply observing the way he commanded respect even through a phone line. Now I stood in what Signora Bellini had called the guest suite, though it was far more luxurious than any guest accommodation I'd encountered. The bedroom opened onto a terrace overlooking the harbor, where colorful buildings cascaded down to the waterfront like stacked jewels. Late afternoon sun turned everything golden, and I could hear the distant sound of boats and voices from the marina below. A knock at the door interrupted my admiration. "Come in," I called. Signora Bellini entered, a compact woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The stylist has arrived, Signorina Costa. Shall I send her up?" "Yes, please. Thank you." Within moments, a whirlwind named Francesca swept into the room, trailing assistants carrying garment bags and cases. She was tall, impossibly thin, dressed entirely in black, and she studied me with the intensity of a sculptor assessing marble. "Turn," she commanded in accented English. I obeyed, feeling self-conscious as she circled me. "Good bone structure. Excellent skin. Hair needs work, but we can fix that." She snapped her fingers, and one of her assistants produced a tablet. "Signor Salvatore said you need everything. Dress for tonight. Day wear, evening wear, accessories. Yes?" "I suppose so." "No supposing. He was very clear. You must look like you belong to him. Come, we begin." What followed was 3 hours of organized chaos. Francesca's team measured every part of me, photographed me from multiple angles, held fabric swatches against my skin under different lights. They debated in rapid Italian while I stood like a mannequin, occasionally told to raise my arms or turn my head. For tonight's gallery opening, Francesca selected a dress of deep emerald silk that clung to my curves before flowing into a graceful skirt. The color made my eyes look impossibly green, she explained, and the cut was sophisticated enough to make a statement without being vulgar. "You are representing Nico Salvatore," she said firmly. "Everyone will be watching you, judging. You must be perfect." The pressure of that statement settled over my shoulders like a weight. After the fitting, a hairstylist transformed my tangled waves into smooth, elegant curls that fell past my shoulders. A makeup artist created what she called a natural evening look, though it required more products than I'd known existed. When they finally allowed me to look in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked sophisticated, expensive, confident. Nothing like the girl who'd been sunbathing on a yacht that morning, hoping to impress an ex-boyfriend who'd turned out to be a fraud. "Bellissima," Francesca pronounced with satisfaction. "Now you look worthy of him." She left with her entourage, and I was alone again. The ring caught the light as I moved, and I found myself studying it more closely. The setting was intricate, clearly antique. His grandmother's ring, he'd said. That felt significant, using a family heirloom even for a fake engagement. Another knock. "Yes?" This time it was Nico himself who entered, and he stopped short when he saw me. Something flickered across his face too quickly for me to identify. "You look," he began, then seemed to reconsider his words. "Perfect. You look perfect." He'd changed into a dark suit that made him look even more dangerous than the casual linen had. His hair was styled back from his face, and he wore a watch that probably cost more than a car. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No, but I don't think waiting will help." His smile was brief but genuine. "Honest. Good. Let me tell you what to expect." He moved to the terrace and I followed. We stood side by side looking out over the harbor. The gallery is owned by a man named Antonio Grimaldi. He's neutral in the conflicts between various families, which makes his venue perfect for this kind of event. Valentina will be there with her inner circle, probably 6 or 7 people. She'll approach us at some point during the evening, and when she does, you need to appear completely comfortable. Confident. Like you have every right to be on my arm. And if I don't feel that way, fake it. He turned to face me. "You've spent months trying to win back a man who wasn't worth your time. Tonight, you're going to make him regret ever letting you go, and you're going to do it by being the most captivating woman in that gallery. You're assuming Dante will hear about this. I'm ensuring it. I've made certain that news of my engagement will reach the right ears by morning. Your ex will wake up to discover not only that he's financially ruined, but that you've moved on to someone far beyond his reach." The vindictiveness should have troubled me. Instead, I felt a dark satisfaction. What happens when Valentina approaches us? Follow my lead. I'll handle the conversation. Your job is simply to look at me like you're in love, to let me touch you possessively, to make it clear to everyone watching that you're completely devoted. Can you do that? I thought about it. Thought about the way he'd kissed me on the yacht, the strange electricity I'd felt. Yes, I can do that. Good. He checked his watch. The car leaves in 30 minutes. I'll meet you downstairs. He started to go, then hesitated. Luna, whatever happens tonight, remember that you're under my protection. No one will harm you. I've given my word. After he left, I stood on the terrace, watching the sun sink lower. Somewhere in this beautiful town, a dangerous woman was preparing to meet me. Somewhere back in Naples or Milan, Dante was discovering the extent of his downfall. And here I was, about to walk into a world of criminals and art thieves, wearing a dead woman's ring and pretending to be in love with a man I'd met less than 24 hours ago. The smart thing would be to run, to leave now, before things got more complicated. But when I looked down at the ring on my finger, catching the last rays of sunlight, I knew I wasn't going to run. Not yet. At precisely 8:30, I descended the villa's curved staircase in my emerald dress and borrowed diamond earrings. Nico waited at the bottom, and when he saw me, his expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. "Stunning," he said quietly. He extended his arm. "Shall we?" I placed my hand in the crook of his elbow, feeling the warmth of him through the fabric of his suit. We walked together to the waiting car, where Marco held the door open. The drive to the gallery took less than 10 minutes, winding through narrow streets lined with expensive shops and restaurants. Other beautifully dressed people walked the cobblestones, heading toward the same destination. "Remember," Nico said as we approached, "you belong here. You're my equal, not my accessory. Walk with your head up. Let them wonder who you are." The car stopped in front of a beautiful old building with warm light spilling from tall windows. A small crowd had gathered outside, and I caught sight of photographers. My stomach clenched. "They'll want pictures," Nico warned. "Let them have a few. Smile, but not too widely. Look at me occasionally like you're sharing a private joke." Marco opened the door, and Nico exited first, then turned to offer me his hand. The moment my heels touched the cobblestones, camera flashes started. Nico's arm came around my waist, proprietary and warm, as he guided me toward the gallery entrance. I followed his instructions, keeping my expression serene while my heart hammered. We paused once, letting the photographers get their shots, and Nico leaned down to whisper in my ear, "You're doing beautifully." To anyone watching, it would have looked like an intimate comment between lovers. The cameras went wild. Inside, the gallery was already crowded with Italy's wealthy elite. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes. Classical music played softly. Original artworks worth millions hung on white walls, carefully lit to show each piece to perfection. Nico took 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter, handing me one. His hand found the small of my back again, that possessive touch he'd mentioned, guiding me deeper into the gallery. "There," he murmured against my ear, "by the Caravaggio reproduction. That's Valentina." I looked where he indicated and saw her. She was beautiful in the way of expensive things, perfectly maintained and cold. Dark hair swept up in an elaborate style, wearing a red dress that must have cost a fortune, diamonds at her throat. She was speaking with an older man, but her eyes were on us. "She's seen us," I whispered. "Good. Let her wait. We'll look at the art first. Make her come to us." We moved through the gallery, and I found myself genuinely interested in the pieces. Despite the situation, my art history studies hadn't been completely forgotten. Nico seemed to notice my interest. "You actually appreciate this," he observed. "Most people only pretend." "I told you I studied art history, before life got in the way." "What would you have done with that degree?" "Worked in a museum, maybe as a curator or restoration specialist. Something that let me be close to beautiful things every day." I realized how wistful I sounded and cleared my throat. "But that's ancient history now." "Nothing is ancient history if you still want it." His voice was thoughtful. "Perhaps after our arrangement ends, you could return to your studies." "With what money?" "With the payment I'll give you for these 3 months. It should be sufficient for university and living expenses." I looked at him sharply. "You never mentioned how much you're paying me." "Because the amount doesn't matter. It will be generous enough that you won't need to worry about finances for quite some time." Before I could respond, a voice cut through the ambient conversation. "Nico, darling, I wasn't certain you'd come. Valentina Rossi had materialized beside us, her smile sharp as broken glass. Up close, she was even more striking, but there was something predatory in her eyes that made my skin crawl. Valentina. Nico's voice was cool, professional. His arm tightened around my waist. May I introduce my fiancée, Luna Costa. Luna, this is Valentina Rossi, a business associate. The emphasis on business associate was deliberate, a gentle rebuke. Valentina's eyes narrowed fractionally as they swept over me, cataloging every detail. Fiancé, she repeated. How unexpected. I wasn't aware you were seeing anyone, Nico. It was sudden, he agreed. When you know, you know. How romantic. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. And where did you two meet? On Nico's yacht, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I ended up there by mistake, actually, but it turned out to be the best mistake of my life. Nico looked down at me, and the expression in his eyes was so tender it almost looked real. The feeling is mutual, amore. He lowered his head and kissed me, right there in front of Valentina and anyone else watching. It was soft, sweet, but with an undercurrent of heat that made my toes curl. When he pulled back, I knew my cheeks were flushed. Valentina's smile had frozen into something brittle. How lovely. You must tell me all about your plans. When is the wedding? We haven't set a date yet, Nico said smoothly. We're enjoying being engaged for now. Of course. Well, congratulations to you both. She turned to me, and her eyes were chips of ice. I do hope you know what you're getting into, my dear. Nico's world can be quite complicated. I'm learning, I said, meeting her gaze. But some complications are worth it. Nico's hand squeezed my waist in what felt like approval. Valentina's expression shifted, and for just a moment I saw something dark flicker across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by polite disinterest. I should circulate, enjoy the gallery. She glided away, and I released a breath I hadn't known I was holding. Well done, Nico murmured. That was perfect. She hates me. She hates that I chose someone she can't control. There's a difference. He guided me toward a quieter corner of the gallery. You handled that beautifully, better than I expected for your first encounter. She's terrifying. Yes, but you didn't flinch. That matters. He touched my cheek gently. We can leave soon if you'd like. We've made our appearance, established our relationship publicly. The rest of the evening would just be socializing. I glanced around the gallery, at the people in their expensive clothes, drinking expensive champagne, admiring expensive art. This wasn't my world, but for 3 months, it would be. Let's stay a bit longer, I heard myself say. I'd like to see more of the collection. Nico's smile was warm, genuine. As you wish, amore. We spent another hour at the gallery, and I found myself relaxing slightly. Nico knew many of the guests, and he introduced me to several, always with his hand at my back or his arm around my waist. Each introduction reinforced the image of us as a couple, and I began to understand the performance he'd described. By the time we left, I was exhausted from maintaining the facade, but also strangely exhilarated. We'd done it. We'd convinced Valentina and everyone else that our engagement was real. In the car on the way back to the villa, Nico's demeanor shifted. He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in clipped Italian. His expression grew darker with each passing moment. What's wrong? I asked when he ended the call. He looked at me, and something in his eyes made my stomach clench. Valentina made a move faster than I anticipated. One of my associates just informed me that she's been asking questions about you. Specifically, she wants to know if you're really who you claim to be. And we need to make this engagement look even more real than we planned, starting with you moving your things from the guest suite to my bedroom tomorrow. My eyes widened. What? Appearances, Luna. The staff talks. If we're engaged, we should be sharing a bed. We won't actually," he added quickly. "I'll sleep in the suite sitting room, but anyone observing will believe we're lovers." I stared at him, my mind racing. This was escalating faster than I'd anticipated, but I'd agreed to play this role and Nico was right. If we wanted Valentina to believe us, we needed to commit completely. "All right," I said finally. "Tomorrow I'll move my things." Nico reached across the seat and took my hand, the one wearing his grandmother's ring. "Thank you. I know this isn't what you signed up for." "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I'm not sure what I signed up for, but it's certainly more interesting than serving coffee to tourists." His laugh was low and genuine. "That it is, amore. That it is." As the car pulled up to the villa, I realized that somewhere over the course of the evening, I'd stopped thinking of this as purely pretense. The way Nico looked at me, touched me, spoke to me, it had started to feel almost real, and that, I suspected, was going to be more dangerous than anything Valentina Rossi could throw at me. Moving into Nico's suite felt like crossing an invisible threshold. My belongings looked foreign against the masculine elegance of his space, dark wood and leather mixed with surprisingly tasteful art. He'd been true to his word, taking the sitting room for himself while I occupied the bedroom, but the intimacy of sharing the space was undeniable. We'd fallen into a routine over the following week. Mornings, we'd have breakfast on the terrace, Nico making calls while I sketched in a journal he'd bought me after noticing my interest in the gallery art. Afternoons, he worked from his study while I explored Portofino or read. Evenings brought events, dinners, gallery openings, always with his hand at my back and that ring catching light. The touching had become natural. His arm around my waist, his fingers threading through mine, the occasional kiss that left me breathless, even though I knew it was for show. I'd stopped flinching when he reached for me, stopped second-guessing the warmth in his eyes when he looked at me. That should have worried me more than it did. It was a Wednesday afternoon when everything changed. I was curled up in the window seat of Nico's study, reading while he worked at his desk. The silence between us was comfortable, broken only by the scratch of his pen and the occasional turning of pages. "Luna," he said suddenly, his voice tight. I looked up to find him staring at his computer screen, his expression carved from ice. "What's wrong?" "Valentina just made her play." He turned the laptop so I could see. On the screen was a photo, grainy but unmistakable, of me standing outside my old apartment in Naples. The one I'd left weeks ago. My stomach dropped. "How did she—" "She's had you investigated. This was taken 3 months ago, according to the date stamp. She knows where you lived, where you worked, probably who your friends are." He stood abruptly, pulling out his phone. "Marco, I need a full security sweep of the villa. Now." "Why would she do this?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "Because she doesn't believe us. She's looking for leverage, for some proof that our relationship is manufactured." He paused, his jaw tight. "There's more. She started making inquiries about your parents, about their deaths." Ice flooded my veins. "Leave them out of this." "I intend to." His voice softened slightly. "But this means we need to adjust our strategy. Valentina's not just watching anymore. She's actively trying to find a weakness, something she can use against us. What do we do?" Nico was silent for a moment, his mind clearly working through options. Then he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We give her exactly what she's looking for. We make this relationship so real, so public, that she has no choice but to accept it." "How?" "By telling the story of us. Our engagement story, our plans, our future. We'll give an interview to one of the society magazines, the kind Valentina reads religiously. We'll be photographed being domestic, being in love. will make it impossible for her to dismiss us as a convenient fiction. My heart hammered. That's a lot of exposure. Yes, which is why I'm giving you one final chance to walk away. He moved closer, his eyes searching mine. Once we do this, there's no taking it back. Your face will be in magazines. You'll be known as Nico Salvatore's fiancé. People from your past will see it, including Dante. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Dante, about the life I'd left behind, about the girl who'd been so desperate to win back a man who'd never deserved her. That girl felt like a stranger now. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. Something shifted in Nico's expression. He reached out, cupping my face in his hands. You're remarkable, you know that? Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, cursed softly, and answered. Yes? I watched his face change as he listened, growing progressively darker. When? How many? A pause. No, keep her there. I'm coming now. He ended the call and looked at me, his expression grim. There's been an incident. One of my warehouses was broken into last night. I need to go assess the damage and deal with the police. Police? They're surprisingly useful when you need them to be. I have certain arrangements. He grabbed his jacket. Marco will stay here with you. Don't leave the villa. Nico, wait. I stood, moving toward him. Is this because of Valentina? Possibly. Or it could be coincidence. Either way, I can't risk your safety. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, and the casual intimacy of the gesture made my chest tighten. I'll be back by dinner. Try not to worry. After he left, the villa felt enormous and empty. I tried to read, to sketch, to focus on anything other than the growing anxiety in my stomach. Marco stationed himself outside the study door, a silent, imposing presence. Hours passed. I ate lunch alone on the terrace, watching boats in the harbor, wondering what Nico was dealing with, wondering if he was safe. The realization hit me suddenly. I cared. Not just about the arrangement, not just about the revenge on Dante or the money or the adventure. I actually cared about Nico Salvatore, this man I was supposed to be deceiving the world about. That was dangerous, more dangerous than Valentina or any warehouse break-in. I was still wrestling with that thought when my phone rang, an unknown number. Hello, Luna Costa? A woman's voice unfamiliar. Yes? This is Detective Francesca Russo with the Italian Financial Police. We'd like to ask you some questions about your relationship with Nico Salvatore. My blood went cold. I don't understand. We're investigating certain irregularities in Signor Salvatore's business dealings. As his fiancé, you may have information that could help our inquiry. Would you be willing to meet with us? Every instinct screamed danger. I'd need to speak with a lawyer first. Of course, but Ms. Costa, you should know that cooperating now would be in your best interest. Signor Salvatore's activities have caught the attention of multiple international agencies. If you're unaware of what he's involved in, you may want to distance yourself before things become more complicated. I have nothing to say without legal representation. Very well. But think carefully about who you're protecting. She paused. And ask yourself how well you really know the man you're engaged to. The call ended, and I sat frozen, staring at my phone. Was this real? Or was it Valentina finding another way to drive a wedge between us? How would I even know the difference? I found Marco in the hallway. I need to speak with Nico. Now. He's in meetings, Miss Costa. I don't care. Someone claiming to be a detective just called me asking questions about him. He needs to know. Marco's expression hardened. He pulled out his phone and stepped away, speaking rapidly in Italian. When he returned, his face was grave. Signor Salvatore is coming back now. He said to tell you not to speak to anyone else until he arrives. Nico returned within the hour, his expression thunderous. He found me in the study, still clutching my phone like it might explode. Tell me exactly what was said. I recounted the conversation word for word. Nico listened without interruption, his jaw growing tighter with each sentence. "It's legitimate," he said finally. "Or rather, the investigation is real, but the detective who called you shouldn't have. Someone leaked that you're connected to me, and they're trying to use you to get information." "What kind of investigation?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The kind that's been following me for years. Art theft, money laundering, tax evasion. They can never prove enough to move forward, but they keep trying." "So it's true. Everything they're investigating." "Some of it." He met my eyes. "I've never lied to you about what I do, Luna. I operate in gray areas. Sometimes I cross lines. But I have rules, standards. I don't hurt innocents. What happens if they can prove something? Then I face the consequences." His voice was matter of fact. "But that's my problem, not yours. You're not involved in my business operations. You can't be held responsible for what I've done. But they'll try to use me against you." "Yes, which is why we need to be very careful from here on out. No discussing business around you. No involving you in anything beyond our public appearances." He moved closer, taking my hands in his. "I'm sorry, Luna. I never intended for you to be caught in this particular web." I looked down at our joined hands, at the ring that had started to feel like part of me. "What do we do now?" "We continue as planned. The magazine interview, the public appearances, all of it. Because if we stop now, if we show any crack in our story, Valentina will exploit it, and the police will assume you were complicit all along. So I'm trapped." "No." His grip tightened. "You're protected. There's a difference. I won't let anything happen to you, Luna. I swear it." I wanted to believe him. God help me. I did believe him. "The interview is scheduled for tomorrow," he continued. "We'll tell them our story. How we met. How I knew immediately you were special. How we're planning our future together. And we'll make it so convincing that no one, not Valentina, not the police, not anyone, will doubt us. And after the 3 months are up?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Let's get through tomorrow first." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in Nico's bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the sea through the open windows. At some point after midnight, I heard movement from the sitting room, followed by his voice, low and tense, speaking Italian. I slipped out of bed and padded to the doorway. Nico sat on the couch, phone pressed to his ear, still fully dressed despite the late hour. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes I'd never noticed before. He saw me and held up a finger, finishing his conversation. When he hung up, he simply looked at me, and the mask he usually wore had slipped completely. "Can't sleep either?" I asked softly. "Too much to think about." He patted the couch beside him. "Come sit. Tell me what's keeping you awake." I crossed to him, curling up on the opposite end of the couch. "Everything. The police, Valentina, this whole situation. 3 weeks ago, I was serving coffee and hoping my ex would notice me. Now I'm caught between a crime boss and a woman who wants me eliminated." "Crime boss." He smiled wryly. "Is that what you think I am? Isn't it accurate?" "Perhaps. Though I prefer entrepreneur with flexible morals." He studied me in the dim light. "Do you regret saying yes?" I considered the question honestly. "No," which probably says something worrying about my judgment. "Or it says you're braver than you thought." He reached out, his fingers brushing my ankle where it rested on the couch. "You've handled everything thrown at you with remarkable grace." The casual touch sent warmth through me. "I'm terrified most of the time. Fear and bravery aren't mutually exclusive." His thumb traced small circles on my skin. The bravest people I know are the ones who act despite being afraid. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, his hand still resting on my ankle, and I realized this was the most real moment we'd shared. No performance, no audience, just two people awake in the middle of the night. "Tell me about your grandmother," I said. "The one whose ring I'm wearing." Nico's expression softened. "Nonna Sofia. She raised me after my parents died, taught me everything important. Honor, loyalty, the value of keeping your word. She would have liked you." "How did she feel about your business?" "She knew what I did, disapproved of some of it, understood the necessity of other parts. Mostly, she just wanted me to be happy." He paused. "She never was, I don't think. After my grandfather died, she went through the motions of living, but the joy was gone. Is that why you gave me her ring? Because she understood duty without happiness?" His eyes met mine, and there was something vulnerable in them I'd never seen before. "I gave you her ring because she believed in love, even when life disappointed her, and because something about you reminded me of her strength." The moment stretched between us, charged with unspoken things. Then Nico cleared his throat and pulled his hand back. "You should try to sleep. Tomorrow will be demanding." I stood, then hesitated. "Nico, thank you for protecting me, for all of this." "It's not just protection anymore," he said quietly. "You know that, don't you?" I did know, but acknowledging it felt like stepping off another cliff, so I simply smiled and retreated to the bedroom, my heart racing with more than fear. Tomorrow we'd tell the world our love story, and the terrifying part was how much of it was starting to feel true. The journalist from Bella Vita magazine arrived promptly at 10, accompanied by a photographer and her assistant. Carlotta Ricci was elegant and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who missed nothing. She'd built her career on society profiles that were both flattering and subtly revealing. Nico and I met her on the villa's terrace, where Signora Bellini had arranged a breakfast spread that looked like something from a magazine itself. Fresh fruit, pastries, espresso in delicate cups. The morning sun sparkled on the harbor below, and I'd dressed carefully in a cream linen dress that Francesca had selected. Sophisticated, but approachable. "Signor Salvatore, Signorina Costa, thank you for agreeing to this interview." Carlotta settled into her chair with practiced grace. "My readers are fascinated by your engagement. Nico, you've been quite private about your personal life until now." "I was waiting for the right person," Nico said smoothly, his hand finding mine on the table. "Some things are worth the wait." The photographer started snapping pictures as we spoke, and I tried to relax under the scrutiny. "Tell me how you met," Carlotta prompted, her recorder already running. I glanced at Nico, and he nodded for me to start. "It was completely by accident," I began, finding the story easier to tell than I'd expected. "I was supposed to meet someone on what I thought was his yacht. I ended up on Nico's boat instead, wearing a bikini and looking ridiculous." Nico's smile was warm. She looked anything but ridiculous. I came up from below deck and found this beautiful woman sunbathing on my yacht, completely oblivious that she was trespassing. "I was mortified," I continued, and the memory of that actual embarrassment made my cheeks flush naturally. I tried to explain, tried to leave, but Nico was so gracious about the mix-up. "I couldn't let her leave," he said, his thumb tracing circles on my hand. "I invited her to stay for lunch, just to make sure she knew she wasn't in trouble, and we talked for hours. She was studying art history before life intervened. We connected over a shared love of Renaissance painting." "And when did you know it was serious?" Carlotta asked, leaning forward with obvious interest. "That first day," Nico said without hesitation. There was something about Luna. She wasn't impressed by the yacht or the lifestyle. She looked at me like I was just a man, not a name or a reputation. That's incredibly rare in my world. The sincerity in his voice made my heart clench. Was he acting? Or was there truth beneath the performance? Luna, what about you? When did you realize you were in love? I looked at Nico, at the way sunlight caught in his dark hair, at the softness in his eyes when he looked back at me. It was gradual, I said honestly. At first I was just dazzled. He was so different from anyone I'd known. But then I started seeing past the surface. The way he treats people with respect, regardless of their position. His love of art and beauty. His unexpected kindness. I paused. I think I started falling for him the night he told me about his grandmother. Nico's hand tightened on mine, and something flickered across his face. And the proposal? Carlotta pressed. How did that happen? We were in Portofino, Nico said, just the two of us, walking along the harbor at sunset. Luna was talking about a painting she'd seen in a gallery, so animated and passionate. I realized I wanted to see that light in her eyes for the rest of my life. So I asked her, right there on the street, with tourists walking past and fishermen cleaning their boats. No grand gesture, just the truth. It was a beautiful lie, and I found myself almost believing it. The interview continued for another hour, Carlotta asking about our plans, our families, our future. Nico fielded questions about his business with vague but charming answers. I talked about wanting to return to university, to finish my art history degree. Perhaps you'll work with me eventually, Nico suggested, and I could see Carlotta's eyes light up at the romantic image. I acquire art for private collectors. Having someone with Luna's expertise and passion would be invaluable. After Carlotta left, promising the article would run in next month's issue, I felt drained. Maintaining the performance for over an hour had been exhausting. You did wonderfully, Nico said, pouring us both wine. She believed every word. Did she? I took the glass, suddenly needing the fortification. Or did we just give her a good story? Both. He studied me over his wine. What you said about falling for me. The part about kindness and my grandmother. That felt real. Maybe it was. The admission slipped out before I could stop it. Nico went very still. Luna. My phone rang, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. I glanced at the screen and my stomach dropped. It's Dante. Answer it, Nico said immediately. Put it on speaker. My hands shook as I accepted the call. Hello? Luna. Dante's voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to say to each other. Please, just 5 minutes. I'm in Portofino. I saw the photos from the gallery opening. I need to understand what's happening. I looked at Nico, who nodded slowly. Fine. 5 minutes. Where are you? The cafe near the marina. Can you meet me there? I'll be there in 20 minutes. I ended the call and stood. I need to do this. Not alone, Nico said firmly. Marco will be with you and I'll be nearby. Dante is desperate, which makes him potentially dangerous. 20 minutes later, I walked into the cafe to find Dante at a corner table. He looked terrible, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, clothes that looked slept in. He stood when he saw me, and his eyes widened. I knew what he was seeing. The expensive dress, the perfect hair and makeup, the ring that caught the light. I looked like I belonged to a different world than the one we'd shared. Luna, he breathed. You look different? I sat across from him, very aware of Marco positioned by the door. What do you want, Dante? To understand, to apologize, to ask if there's any chance. There isn't. I kept my voice steady. Whatever we had, it's over. It was over before you made it official. Because of him? Nico Salvatore? Dante's voice rose slightly. Do you know who he is? What he does? Yes. And unlike you, he's been honest with me from the start. Dante flinched. I never meant to hurt you. The business opportunities, they were real. I just needed time to make them work. They were built on lies, Dante. Borrowed money, fake credentials, people you conned into believing in you. I leaned forward. I was one of those people. I believed you when you said you were successful, when you said we had a future. But it was all fiction. And what you have with Salvatore isn't? His voice turned bitter. You've known him for what, a few weeks? And suddenly you're engaged, wearing diamonds that could buy a house. Don't tell me that's real, Luna. For a moment, I couldn't answer, because he was right. My relationship with Nico had started as pure fiction, but somewhere along the way, the lines had blurred. What Nico and I have is none of your business, I said finally. You gave up the right to question my choices when you walked away. I made mistakes, I know that. But Luna, please, can't we try again? I'll fix everything. I'll be honest with you from now on. No. The word came out firmly, with no hesitation. You had your chance, Dante. Multiple chances. You chose to waste them. He stared at me, and I saw the exact moment he accepted it was truly over. He'll hurt you eventually, he said quietly. Men like Salvatore don't know how to do anything else. Maybe, but that's my risk to take. I stood. Goodbye, Dante. I hope you figure out who you want to be instead of who you were pretending to be. I walked out without looking back, my heart steady despite the confrontation. Marco fell into step beside me as we left the cafe. Well? Nico's voice came through Marco's earpiece, which he tilted so I could hear. It's done, I said. I don't need revenge anymore, Nico. He's already punished himself more than we ever could. There was a long pause. Come back to the villa. We need to talk. Oh. When I arrived, Nico was on the terrace, staring out at the harbor. He turned when he heard me approach, and his expression was troubled. You let him off easy, he observed. I let him go. There's a difference. I moved to stand beside him. Holding on to anger was only hurting me. He's not worth it. You're more forgiving than I would be. I'm not forgiving him. I'm just choosing to stop letting him occupy space in my head. I paused. Besides, I have more important things to focus on now. Like what? Like figuring out what happens when our 3 months are up. Like what I want my life to look like after this is over. Like... I hesitated, then decided to be honest. Like understanding what's real between us and what's performance. Nico was quiet for a long moment. That's a dangerous question, Luna. I know, but I need to ask it anyway. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. It's Valentina, he answered, putting it on speaker. Valentina. Nico. Her voice was smooth as silk. I read the most interesting article today. Well, the advance copy that a friend at Bella Vita was kind enough to share. You and your charming fiancé, so in love. It's almost believable. Is there a point to this call? Just wanted to congratulate you both, and to let you know that I'm hosting a party next week on my yacht in Monaco. I expect you'll both attend. We have other plans. Cancel them, because if you don't come, I'll be forced to share some interesting information I've recently acquired, about Luna's parents, for instance, about how they died. My blood went cold. Nico's hand found mine, gripping tightly. What are you talking about? I asked. Car accident, wasn't it? How tragic. Though I wonder what the police would think if they knew about the brake tampering, about the insurance payout that was never quite explained. My parents' deaths were investigated, I said, my voice shaking. There was no foul play. Are you certain? Because I have a friend in the Naples Police Department who might be willing to reopen the case, with certain suggestions about what to look for. Nico's voice was deadly quiet. If you go anywhere near Luna's family, I will destroy you, Valentina, completely and irreversibly. Then come to my party, both of you. We can discuss terms like civilized people. She paused. Or I can make calls tonight. Your choice. The line went dead. I stood frozen, my mind reeling. My parents' deaths were an accident, weren't they? Nico pulled me into his arms, and I let him, needing the solid warmth of him. We'll find out. I have people who can investigate quietly. But Luna, even if she's telling the truth about brake tampering, that doesn't mean you were involved. But she'll make it look like I was. She'll ruin their memory just to hurt me. We won't let that happen. He tilted my face up to meet his eyes. We'll go to her party. We'll play her game. And while she's focused on us, I'll be working behind the scenes to neutralize her permanently. How? By doing what I should have done months ago. By going to my contacts in law enforcement and giving them everything I have on her operations. Valentina has made too many enemies, hurt too many people. It's time someone stopped her. But that means exposing your own business. Some things are more important than business. His hands cupped my face. You're more important than business. The words hung between us, weighted with meaning we'd both been avoiding. Nico, I whispered. This stopped being pretend for me a while ago. I know. His voice was rough. For me too. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the performative kisses we'd shared in public. This was raw, desperate, real. His hands tangled in my hair as mine gripped his shoulders, and I poured every confused emotion of the past weeks into that kiss. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. We're in trouble, amore. Real trouble. I know, I breathed. What do we do? We finish this, together. We go to Valentina's party, we call her bluff, and we end this once and for all. And then? Then we figure out what we want to be when we're not pretending. I nodded, and he kissed me again, softer this time. A promise instead of a question. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. And that, I realized, was the first truly real thing in this entire arrangement. The week leading up to Valentina's party passed in a blur of preparation and escalating tension. Nico's contacts confirmed that my parents' accident had indeed involved brake tampering, but they'd also discovered something else. The investigation had been quietly buried by someone with significant influence. Someone, Nico suspected, connected to Valentina's family even back then. Your parents had nothing to do with my world, Nico explained one evening as we reviewed the files his investigators had compiled. But your father worked as an accountant for a shipping company that Valentina's father used for money laundering. He found discrepancies, started asking questions. The room spun around me. They were killed because my father noticed some numbers didn't add up. I'm sorry, Luna. So deeply sorry. Nico's voice was heavy with genuine grief. Valentina bringing this up now isn't coincidence. She's reminding me that her family has always been willing to hurt innocents to protect their interests. Then we destroy her, I said, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. Completely. We arrived in Monaco 2 days before the party, staying at Nico's apartment overlooking the harbor. The night before Valentina's event, we met with a man named Inspector Laurent Dubois from Interpol's Art Crime Division. Monsieur Salvatore, Dubois said, settling into Nico's study with a thick folder. You said you had information about Valentina Rossi's operations. I'm prepared to provide documentation of every illegal transaction I'm aware of over the past 5 years. Art theft, smuggling, money laundering, extortion. Everything. Nico's voice was steady. In exchange for immunity and protection for Luna. Dubois studied us both. You understand this would mean the end of your own activities in this area? I'm aware. I'm also aware that I've let this go on too long. Valentina has proven she's willing to hurt anyone to expand her empire. That needs to stop. Over the next 2 hours, Nico laid out everything he knew. Names, dates, transactions, storage locations. I watched in amazement as he systematically dismantled not just Valentina's network, but his own position in it. This is extensive, Dubois said finally. With this, we can build a case that will put Rossi away for decades, but we'll need you to testify. Whatever it takes. After Dubois left, I found Nico on the balcony, shoulders tense as he stared out at the glittering harbor. You're giving up everything, I said softly. Not everything, just the parts that were destroying who I wanted to be. He turned to me. My grandmother would be proud, I think, finally choosing honor over profit. What will you do after, when all this is over? Start over. My legitimate businesses can sustain me. The art consultation, the galleries, the restoration work, all the parts I actually enjoyed. He reached for my hand, maybe with a brilliant art historian by my side, if she's willing. My heart skipped. Nico. I know it's fast. I know we started this as a lie. But somewhere along the way, it became the most real thing in my life. He pulled me close. I love you, Luna. Not as part of an arrangement or a performance. Actually, truly love you. I love you too, I whispered against his chest. Even though you're a criminal and a manipulator, and you've turned my life completely upside down. His laugh rumbled through me. We'll work on the criminal part, the rest might be permanent. The night of Valentina's party arrived with perfect Mediterranean weather. Her yacht was even more impressive than Nico's, a floating palace anchored in Monaco's harbor. As we boarded, I wore a deep blue gown that Francesca had called armor disguised as evening wear, and Nico's grandmother's ring caught every light. Valentina greeted us on deck, resplendent in black and diamonds. Nico, Luna, so glad you could make it. Her smile was sharp. Come, let me introduce you to some friends. She led us through the party, making introductions that I quickly realized were strategic. These were people she wanted to impress, to show that even Nico Salvatore would bend to her will. I played my role perfectly, the devoted fiancé, while my mind catalogued every detail I could remember from Nico's briefing. An hour into the party, Valentina pulled me aside while Nico was engaged in conversation with a shipping magnate. Walk with me, she said, not a request. She led me to the yacht's bow, away from the other guests. I wanted a moment alone with you, Luna, to understand what you think you're doing. I don't know what you mean. Please, I wasn't born yesterday. You're a girl from Naples who served coffee for a living 3 months ago. Now you're engaged to one of the most powerful men in the Mediterranean. That doesn't happen without calculation. Or maybe it's just love. I met her eyes steadily. Something you wouldn't understand. Her smile turned cold. Love is weakness. Love gets people killed. Like your parents, for instance. Rage flooded through me, but I kept my voice level. You know what I've learned from Nico? Power built on fear only lasts until someone stops being afraid. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Valentina. Then you're a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool who has something you never will. I touched the ring on my finger. Someone who actually loves me for who I am, not what I can do for them. Valentina's face contorted with fury. She stepped closer, and I saw her hand move toward her clutch. But before she could reach whatever was inside, Inspector Dubois appeared at the bow entrance, flanked by several officers. "Valentina Rossi," he said formally. "You're under arrest for art theft, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder." Everything happened fast after that. Valentina tried to run, but officers were already positioned throughout the yacht. Guests scrambled away as the arrest unfolded, and I stood frozen, watching justice finally catch up with the woman who'd terrorized so many. Nico appeared at my side, his arm coming around my waist. "It's over," he said quietly. Valentina fought as they handcuffed her, her eyes finding mine across the deck. "This isn't over," she spat. "You think you've won, but you've just made enemies you can't imagine." "Actually," I said, surprising myself with my boldness, "I think we have. Your associates are being arrested as we speak." Nico made sure of it. Her face paled as she understood the full extent of her exposure. They led her away, and the party dissolved into chaos as other guests tried to determine if they were next. We left quietly, slipping away in the confusion. Back at Nico's apartment, I finally let myself shake, the adrenaline leaving my system in waves. "You were magnificent," Nico said, holding me. "Standing up to her like that. You've become fearless. I learned from the best." I pulled back to look at him. "What happens now? With the investigation, with your businesses?" "Dubois has everything he needs. I'll cooperate fully. There will be penalties, probably fines, possibly some legal restrictions on my future activities. But I won't go to prison, and more importantly, you won't be implicated in any of it." "And us? What happens to us?" Nico cupped my face in his hands. "That's entirely up to you, Amore. This started as a 3-month arrangement. We're past that deadline now. You're free to leave, to take the money I promised, and start your life over anywhere you want." "What if I don't want to leave?" His eyes searched mine. "Then don't. Stay with me. Marry me for real. Help me build something legitimate and beautiful. We could open a gallery, maybe in Portofino. You could finish your degree, work as a curator. We could make all those lies we told Carlotta become truth. Is that what you want? More than anything." His voice was fierce. "I want to wake up every morning with you beside me. I want to show you every beautiful piece of art I find and watch your face light up. I want to give you the life you deserve. Not because of an arrangement, but because I love you beyond reason." I kissed him, pouring every answer into it. When we broke apart, both breathless, I whispered, "Yes. To all of it, yes." 2 years later. The gallery opening was everything we'd dreamed it would be. Costa Salvatore Fine Arts occupied a beautifully restored building in Portofino's heart. Its walls hung with carefully curated pieces that straddled the line between accessible and exclusive. Every item had been legitimately acquired, properly documented, legally sold. I moved through the crowd in a dress that accommodated my 6-month pregnancy, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about our latest acquisition. A recently discovered Caravaggio drawing that we'd helped authenticate and would be donating to a museum after the exhibition. Nico found me near the Modigliani we'd bought together, his hand settling on the small of my back in that gesture that had become pure habit. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhilarated. Look at this, Nico. Look at what we built." He followed my gaze around the gallery, pride evident in his expression. After Valentina's arrest, Nico had systematically extracted himself from the gray market. The transition hadn't been easy, and we'd lost some contacts who wouldn't work within legal boundaries. But others had followed his lead, and our reputation for ethical dealing had attracted new collectors who valued transparency. I'd finished my art history degree, graduating with honors. Nico had attended every class he could, sitting in the back like an eager student himself. We'd married quietly in a small ceremony in Portofino, with Signora Bellini and Marco as witnesses. The baby kicked, and Nico's hand moved to feel it, his smile soft. She's active tonight. She's excited. Her parents' gallery is opening. I leaned into him. Can you believe how far we've come from that day on the yacht? Best mistake you ever made, trespassing on my boat. Second best, I corrected. The first was saying yes to your insane proposal. We watched our guests admiring the art, sipping Prosecco, discussing the pieces with genuine interest. Inspector Dubois was there, having become an unexpected friend and advisor on provenance issues. Even Dante had sent a congratulatory message, having rebuilt his life with honest work in Milan. Valentina was serving a 15-year sentence, her empire dismantled completely. The investigation into my parents' deaths had led to arrests of several of her father's old associates. While it couldn't bring them back, knowing the truth had given me closure I hadn't known I needed. Ready for your speech? Nico asked. I nodded, and he guided me to the center of the gallery where a small podium waited. The crowd quieted as I stepped up, Nico beside me. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. This gallery represents more than just a business venture for us. It represents redemption, transformation, and the belief that beauty can exist alongside integrity. I looked at Nico, at the man who'd started as a criminal proposition and become my partner, my love, my future. 2 years ago, I stumbled onto a yacht by mistake and met a man who changed my life completely. He taught me to be brave, to demand more than I thought I deserved, to believe in impossible things. Together, we've built something that honors both the past and the future. Every piece in this gallery tells a story of where it came from and where it's going. In that way, it's not so different from us. The crowd applauded, and Nico kissed me softly, not caring who was watching. Later, after the guests had gone and we were alone in the gallery, I found him standing before the Modigliani, lost in thought. What are you thinking about? I asked, slipping my hand into his. About how different my life would be if you hadn't accidentally ended up on my yacht. If I'd never known you. He turned to me. I would still be operating in shadows, building an empire on theft and deception. You saved me, Luna. From myself. From that life. From becoming someone my grandmother would have mourned. We saved each other, I corrected. You gave me the courage to want more than I'd settled for. To believe I deserved better than Dante, better than struggle, better than invisibility. Our daughter kicked again, and we both laughed. She's going to be just like you, Nico said. Fierce and fearless. God help us both then. We locked up the gallery and walked hand in hand through Portofino's quiet streets, back to the villa that was now truly our home. The same villa where I'd first stayed as his fake fiancé, where we'd practiced kissing for appearances, where everything had started to become real. In our bedroom, the one we now shared without pretense, Nico held me close. Any regrets? He asked. Only that I didn't find your yacht sooner. I kissed him. Though everything happened exactly when it needed to. Fate. Or just really good luck. I smiled against his lips. Either way, I'm grateful for every moment, even the terrifying ones. Especially the terrifying ones, he agreed. They taught us what we were capable of. As I drifted toward sleep in his arms, our daughter moving beneath my hand, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that sun-drenched deck where I'd been desperate to win back a man who'd never deserved me, to this moment of perfect contentment with the man I'd never expected to find. The arrangement had lasted exactly as long as promised, 3 months. But the love that had grown from that deception would last a lifetime. And somewhere, I like to think, Nonna Sofia was smiling at the sight of her ring on my finger, finally given in true love instead of strategic alliance.